Hello and welcome. My name is Hannah, and today I am practicing portraits in my sketchbook. I have 5 really awesome portraits that I'm planning on drawing, and the main thing that I was looking for when I picked out my portraits were the different directions that they were facing. I really have a tough time with different directions of faces, and so that's what we're practicing, is just different directions. I have kind of a clear idea, a kind of clear idea of how I want my spread to look, and in the very middle, I want somebody to be looking right at us, and then on the left, I want somebody looking left, and on the right, I want somebody looking right, and then the other two are going to be looking right, but a little bit funky, you know? I actually struggle quite a bit with planning out how the face is supposed to look. I usually get really excited to get in there and start coloring it up, that I don't want to take the time to make sure that the proportions are correct or the lines are right. So today I'm really just practicing getting the portrait correct and seeing if that really helps the overall picture in the end. And I know that it will. I just kind of have to prove it for myself. One thing that I am learning as I'm drawing the initial portraits is that I am really, really awful at guessing proportions, like really bad. As I continue going along this challenge, I have to keep correcting little things here and there, and it's really kind of starting to frustrate me just because it hurts a little bit to acknowledge your shortfalls. That's it. But that's the point of this challenge, is just to get better at portrait work. It's okay to make mistakes along the way, because when you know where your mistakes are, that's where you know where you need to grow. I should also mention that this is going to be the second part of my second 100 Heads challenge that I've been doing for myself. I did the first 5 quite a long time ago, and it's been too long since I've really focused on portraits, so that's what today is. When I was planning out the composition of this spread, I had huge lofty goals, as I always do, and I wanted all of the heads to be the same size but overlapping a little bit, because I thought that might make the flow a little bit easier to look at. And then as I was drawing these last 2, I kept making mistakes, and somehow I just kept whittling away smaller and smaller. So, I mean, oh well. I'm not too concerned about it, but I have to admit that by this point, I was completely shot. It took all of my concentration just to get here, that I had to accept how things landed, and we'll work with it. It is time to start picking out colors for this very first one, and I have high hopes for this first one. My vision is that I want the highlights to be very colorful, blue, green, yellow, and then it will slowly start to blend into the midtones and the dark tones. And I have to admit that I have a lot of trouble with this one, mainly because I don't think that I'm right where I want to be with my skills in alcohol markers in general. So knowing how to blend from one color that's light to a different color that's dark, I don't know how to do that without making it look really muddy and gross looking. So I had lofty goals here, and I end up needing to rely on the assistance of colored pencils a little bit too heavily, which wasn't my starting goal for this whole project. Initially, I was hoping that I could get so good at alcohol markers miraculously over one practice session that I wouldn't need to rely on colored pencils to make it look really awesome. Now, we all know that colored pencils look really, really good over alcohol markers, but I want to see if I can make alcohol markers my own and make it look really cool all by themselves. But that doesn't happen today, and that's okay. I think just learning how to use alcohol markers in a way that works for me is a huge accomplishment that I had today. And I'm really honestly proud of myself for how far I've come in just one little 5-head session. I will tell you though that there was a big long stint where I was about to scrap this whole project because I thought that she was going to turn out to be a failure, but I kept going because I knew that I wouldn't learn anything if I just stopped. And I feel like that's such a big part of art is figuring out how to problem solve. And so when I went too dark, like with the nose, for example, I went too dark in a couple places, but the nose was the biggest one that bothered me. I decided that once I could lean on the assistance of colored pencils, I started to relax a little bit more, and then I could start to go darker on the skin tones that needed to go darker, and I could relax a little bit more. But right now, it's hard to see the potential, but I'll tell you that she turns out to look really, really cool, and I'm so proud of how she turns out, and I think I want to experiment more with darker skin tones and lighter, colorful highlights, but I need to maybe experiment a little bit more first before I get to, that's like a level hard, and I'm only on like level easy/medium. As far as alcohol markers go, that's what I'm talking about, is the blending between light blue and dark orange or brown. So I think maybe if I had to do this again, I would have to figure out some middle ground, some middle color that's between the light blue and the dark orange, so that the color isn't so drastic and it won't turn into a muddy mess in the middle, and I can kind of assist it along with those middle tones. I hope that makes sense, but that's my thought process. But I ended up needing to cover up a lot of the darker areas with lighter colored pencils, and then once I lightened up with a bright white, then I went over it with the colorful colored pencil and started to color correct some things that maybe I messed up. But now I'm just adding some finishing touches on this girl, adding some bright greens and pinks, and she looks so cool, and I am already really excited to go into the second one. So I decided to tone it down on this one and be less crazy so that I could kind of grow my confidence back. So I ended up using mostly yellows and oranges and a little bit of pinks. And those are all colors that are right next to each other on the color wheel. So I knew that they would blend into each other beautifully without ending up muddy. After having learned so much so quickly with that first one, this one seemed like a total breeze. I was having so much fun with this one. It was just, I turned my brain off and I was just like riding on clouds. I can't even explain how relieved I am that I didn't go with super crazy colors for this one. I do end up using crazy colors again later on, but this one was like a comfort sketch. It was straightforward, and he turns out so cool. I'm just like so excited about this. I wish I could just draw this guy every single day and my life would be perfect. It's worth mentioning also that I am using the Ohuhu marker pad, and this paper is like magic for markers. I can't even explain. They never bleed through no matter how many layers I've ever put on, which really takes the pressure off of feeling like you're adding too much. And it kind of allows you to be a little bit more indecisive with your process. You can definitely work a little slower here. I I have a pretty good base going on with the highlights and the midtones. I just need to work on slowly darkening up the shadows just little bits at a time so I don't go too dark too fast, which is my problem with the last one. When I added in freckles, my favorite method of doing this is to add a dark dot for the freckle and then go back in with the skin tone on top of it so that the freckle slowly just blends out a little bit so it's not so crisp of a freckle. We can't have any crispy freckles here. So I learned with the last portrait that adding hair early on is probably going to be beneficial, and did I apply that in this one? Absolutely not. I added in the hair last, and you know, it is what it is. This is all just one big learning experiment and just having fun. But I decided that I'm not going to go too crazy with the hair. I'm going to keep it really scratchy looking so that the focus stays mainly on the actual face. I'm still going to like do the hair, okay, but it's not going to look awesome. It was time to start in with the colored pencil, and I knew based on the last one how I wanted to complete the colored pencil. I definitely wanted to stay in one direction the entire time, and I actually started in with the black this time, and then once the blacks were in, then I started to implement some pinks and greens here and there. Fun fact about myself is that I have a little bit of an addiction to black colored pencils. I just want to add it everywhere. But I have to rein it in and really try to not. I was actually starting to learn that it is equally as addicting to add in really cool colors. After, like at the very end of this, I start adding in some greens and reds and blues, and that is when it just starts tickling my brain in the best way possible. Also, look at how awesome keeping it in one direction looks. I think it just looks so cool. I start adding blue on the left behind the shadow, and that's not really, I can't really see it in the reference photo, but adding it in, even though you can't see it, it adds just like an extra element of interest, I feel like, and definitely a great decision. It's time to add some finishing touches on this guy, and then we gotta be done and move on with the next picture. I am so excited to draw this reference photo. I have been staring at this one for months. I've had it just sitting there ready to draw, but I've never done it. So now's the perfect time. I really like the shadows on his face. I like that there's like a green aspect to the whole thing, but I also am in love with his ears. I like how they're big, and I like that they're red. So that's kind of the things that I'm going to be leaning towards with this one is keeping green hues and big red ears. And one thing also that I was noticing about this was that the forehead has warmer pink tones and the bottom of the face has cooler green tones. So that's kind of what I'm going to be working on with this one. Once I'm done adding in the base of the under sketch, I guess is what I'm calling it, I'm gonna go in with a neutral skin tone, a good like pink, and cover everything up so that everything kind of starts to blend together. And that's when it really starts to get fun. On a very random side note, yesterday, me and my mom and two of my kids went to go see a musical for Anastasia, and it was so good. It was put on by a high school in my area, and I am just shocked at how good it was. Anastasia is just such a good story, and it makes you like cry a lot. Every time that anybody would start singing, I was just choked up and frog-throated the whole time. It was so good, and I immediately came home and wanted to watch the Anastasia movie, the cartoon. Is it any other kind of movie, or is it only a cartoon? I don't know. But either way, I wanted to come home and watch the movie. I did not, but I will. It's in my near future. I can feel it. Back to this portrait. I have a problem with proportions, as I said, and there's something wrong with with my drawing on this one. I think it's too tall, and I think maybe the ears aren't big enough. Maybe I should have exaggerated the ears. Even if they are like proportionate to what they should be, I think I should have made them a little bit bigger just for the impact and the emphasis on something that is the focal point, at least in my opinion, the focal point. So yeah, maybe next time if I do this again. Oh, I did not mean to make this part so dark. I gave him a mustache on accident. As soon as I did it, I was like, oh crap. So I will be relying on colored pencils again a little bit too much with this one. All in all though, I'm really surprised at just how much of a difference it makes when your drawing is accurate from the get-go. That's something that definitely, like, it feels like it should make sense that that's the case, but you never really notice how much it matters until you do it. So I'm glad, and I will hopefully be implementing more time on my sketches. These are all of the colors that I used for this. I thought that was kind of interesting, and let's go into the colored pencil sketch. I start with white this time so that I could get the lighter parts in, since I did end up going too dark on the mustache area. And I really wanted to emphasize the greens that I was seeing, so I start in with greens and just try to get the tone more green and yellow. One thing that I'm trying to keep consistent across all of these sketches is the colored pencil staying in one direction. I think that's going to be like the unifying theme across all of these. And it's really cool to me once I get the black down on the eyes, how it really livens up the eyes. I don't know, I love it so much. Somehow along the way, as I'm coloring up the colored pencil, the picture somehow doesn't look too tall. What is happening? Is it really just a trick of the eye? Like, I don't understand. I'm just adding in some finishing touches on this one, and honestly, I wish I kind of kept going with a little bit more redness on the cheeks, but I don't. So I might end up adding that on my own time afterwards because this sketch is complete now. But let's get into the next one. This one I thought was just a really interesting pose, and it's definitely not a face direction that I normally go in. I'm seeing lots of yellows and pinks and blues on this one, and greens, obviously. That's like most of what I was using was greens. But I ended up doing the same kind of thing that I did for the first portrait, and then I added in a skin tone on top, and I'll tell you, this marker is dying, so it ends up looking really splotchy and just like yucky. And I mean, it looks a little bit gross, but honestly it didn't really bother me because to me it did add to like the scratchy nature that I kind of enjoy. So I don't know, I kind of like it. And it feels like wrong to admit that. But this one was actually a lot more interesting to color up than I expected. I really like how it looks with just the alcohol marker, and that really surprised me because I've been liking the colored pencil on top so much, and I think I'm finally getting more comfortable with how alcohol markers are supposed to be used in a face setting. For some reason, this one ends up looking a little bit more watercolory to me in the marker stage, and that was really cool to me. I actually kind of leave this done early on, and I keep it very simple. So these are the colors that I used, and then that's it. I decided not to go too crazy with the alcohol markers this time and try to make it as accurate as possible like I have been doing. And I wanted to see what it would look like if I did kind of a different method with this one and added more colored pencil versus alcohol marker ratio to this one. And this one turns out definitely looking different than the other ones, and it's a lot of fun to try different things. I can't ever really stick to one thing. one theme. I can't do it. I'm too ADHD, I guess, for that. But I stick with the same direction that I have been doing just to kind of keep one thing the same. keeping at least like one similarity between all 5 of them. Also, he turns out really green. At some point I was like, am I drawing the Hulk? And then also at another point he started to look a little bit like Spock. It was once I added in the hair, somehow it just transformed him into Spock versus like the Hulk. That was really weird to me, but whatever. I also went in a little bit too heavy with the colored pencil, and I ended up needing to erase so that I could get the highlights a little bit more in your face. And then I added in some blues and some extra fun like colors that, you know, I didn't already add. This next one thing that I wanted to maintain across all of them was that none of them would have necks. And I really like drawing necks, but for some reason for me, knowing where to stop the picture is really hard, and I always end up stopping it in like a really awkward place. So I thought that if I didn't add any necks at all, that was probably going to be my best bet for having a really cohesive and maybe cool looking spread. But as I mentioned before, I was working on getting a really cool looking entire spread. And in my head, the way that I was going to do that was to get all of the heads to overlap. So when I drew my initial circles, I drew them really big and overlapping. And somehow as I drew these last 2 ones, I needed to edit them down so much that I just kept whittling away and they just got smaller and smaller. So this one ended up being not overlapping or touching whatsoever, and that kind of bums me out. But I end up giving her a neck just to make it so that she's not so far away from the pictures next to her. I figured that if it was between having her far away versus having her be the odd one out because of her neck, I think her having the neck was the lesser of the 2 evils. I started to color her up. This is Natalie Portman, by the way, and I guess I don't really have anything else to say about that. I saw the reference and I really was looking for a straight to the side, like a very direct side profile, and I hadn't done that in a very long time, and profiles are tricky for me because the nose to lip to chin ratio is always so hard and I can never get it exactly right. But this one, when I took the time to do it, I mean, I've said it before and I'm just continually shocked that spending time on the sketch actually makes a huge difference. Now, does she turn out perfect? No. Do any of these turn out perfect? No, but they do help me grow, and I think that that was really the point of this whole thing. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but this is part of the 100 Heads challenge for me. I might have said that. I can't remember 5 minutes ago. That was definitely more than 5 minutes ago if I did say it. So these heads are just a continuation of my personal second 100 Heads challenge that I've been doing. I'll show you at the end my first 5 that I did and then the current 5. And it has been a minute. By the way, these are I cannot talk. These are the markers that I used for this one, and I put them aside and then I was like, oh my gosh, her hair is not done. So I finished up doing her hair with markers, and then I continue on with the colored pencil, and she turns out really cool, by the way. What was I saying? So I did the first 500 Heads challenge, and I'm sorry, I did the jeez. I did the first 5 heads of my second 100 Heads challenge very, very long time ago. And I kind of forgot about it, and I mean, I've done portraits since then, but I haven't done it on purpose to try to grow in my portrait making skills. So this was the purpose of this spread. So at the very end, I'm going to add in my numbers, and that's kind of why I'm doing that. This ear, I really like it when ears are very red and more exaggerated than they need to be. And so I end up At very first, I actually did a lot of her ear in black, and I regret that I did that. So I end up erasing a lot of the black that I did and then adding in more reds and oranges to try to tone down the black, you know? I actually really like how this one turns out. This one is probably, I can definitely tell that I'm growing in alcohol markers, and it makes me really excited to continue using alcohol markers for portraits. I wonder if it's also maybe the size of it, because over time they kind of started to get smaller and smaller, and I think this might be the sweet spot of size for what works for me. So that's kind of a fun thing to learn along the way. I really like how all of these turned out. They're all very different, and this is the first one. She turned out so cool, and I really, really like her hair. I love the second one. This is the dude, the other dude, and then the girl. So this is the first 5 of the 100 heads that I started a very long time ago. And it's so cool to see the progress between back then and now, even though I haven't been doing, you know, an intentional portrait growth. So I'm adding in my numbers, and this was so much fun. I hope you had fun joining along with me. And I will see you in the next one. Toodaloo.